This video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thanks for helping me make rent. So a while ago, I decided to get a subscription to Disney Plus so I could watch The Mandalorian because I'm really, really basic. And after realizing that I forgot to cancel my subscription as soon as the show ended, I figured that I might as well get my money's worth and see what they had. And lo and behold, they had a lot of those live-action Disney films that everyone's been talking about. So I decided to check them out, and ever since I've bequeathed my soul to the Chaos Lords, I no longer feel the anguish and suffering that these films were clearly designed to impose on their audience. I'm honestly kind of stunned at what these films have managed to accomplish, but no matter how good you might think they are, the music is, worse. Pout. Beauty and the Beast. So here's the thing. If we're going to talk about this film, there's one thing we need to address, because chances are you're aware of it, but we all need to be on the same page. Emma Watson's voice was extremely artificial in this film.
There's something sweet and almost kind.
So if you watched the movie and you thought it was great and all, wonderful. Turn the video off because you're never going to be able to unhear some of the stuff I'm about to show you. You know, honestly, I don't think I can even pick out like a decent example because it's kind of everywhere.
But unsure.
Like right here, listen to the word before.
Like the one before.
I'm pretty sure that not only did they pitch correct it, but they added an LFO as a kind of artificial vibrato. Take another listen.
Like the one before.
Her vibrato is always like the exact same. Or like, listen to what happens when she says the word these.
Childhood. These were the waters of...
When you listen to the performance, every note's more or less the exact same. It has a perfect attack, the intonation doesn't waver at all, she never flinches, nothing. It's a perfect performance, which is the problem. And I can already see a lot of people in the comment section being all like, something, something, unrealistic standards for women, something, something. And yeah, if you want to sit around for another 3 hours, I'd love to go over how pretty girls have to sing pretty too, and how that's been around since the medieval period, and how Disney is basically using the audio equivalent of Photoshop to establish an unrealistic expectation for everyone everywhere. But the truth is that this video is long enough already, and I have some professional complaining to do. So the, let's call it liberal employment of pitch correction for Watson's performance has basically led to a single kind of response, which has more or less been some kind of variation on, they needed to auto-tune Emma Watson, she must not be able to sing, followed by the digital equivalent of pointing and laughing. Now, this is not fair. The truth is that there are no vocal performances nowadays that don't see at least a little pitch correction. I'm pretty sure you can even hear some for the Beast right here.
Wasting in my lonely tower.
In the live-action Lion King movie, they actually autocorrected Kid Simba to the wrong note here.
Do it all my way.
And we're gonna get to that. Oh, don't you worry. We're gonna get to the Lion King. Oh, yes, we will. All in due time. But back to Beauty and the Beast. Okay, so here's the deal. There are a couple reasons as to why everyone is wrong here. So first and foremost, a depressing number of people have this assumption that musical ability is just gifted to you. Like Apollo throws a fireball at you when you're born and you can either music or not music. And that is just extremely incorrect. Musical capability is really more comparable to athletic capability. Sure, some people are born with natural advantages, but no one just wakes up looking like this. The same way people don't just wake up being able to sing well. If you put in the time, you will see a result. You have to work for these abilities. You have to work to be able to do something like this. And performing music is a physically demanding endeavor. From embouchure and breath support to your fingers and forearms, every instrument has something that you have to physically train and develop in order to get better at being a performer. A lot of being a really, really good musician is just time and training in the practice room. And this is something that you don't really hear a lot of people talking about. These are Olympic athletes, and I don't just mean that in practicing and memorization. And when you go to music school, a part of your training is taking care of your body the exact same way you might expect from a college athlete. If you still don't believe me, I had a friend in college detach a muscle in his back from practicing the piano while carrying too much tension. I knew 2 students while I was in college who now have permanent nerve damage in one of their hands. This is serious stuff, and not practicing properly can lead to permanent problems. So when it comes to being able to perform, really, it's just about proper preparation, just like you might see with a more physical performance. Just think about how many times you've heard of an actor having to go through an insane amount of training just in order to look a certain way for a role. Remember how they trained all the actors and extras for like 6 months before filming 300? There's legitimately no reason they couldn't do something like that in terms of musical training for their actors. In fact, that's exactly what they did for Master and Commander. They gave the actors music lessons so they could actually perform their instruments during this scene. So when you look at the naturally athletic elements of music performance in conjunction with the effectively limitless resources of the Walt Disney Company, there's absolutely no reason Watson couldn't have been properly prepared for what is honestly a really demanding role. She's the lead, it's just her up there. It's not like someone from her background couldn't become a decent singer.
Benevolent brotherhood of man.
But that's not the part that really gets under my skin. The part that bothers me the absolute most about this whole situation was that she had to audition. In fact, if you look it up, Watson talks about how excited she was to have this audition and how, like, unlike her role as Hermione, where apparently she just lucked out one day at school or something, for Beauty and the Beast, she actually had to prepare and audition for this role. She specifically says that she feels like she's earned this role, and she goes as far as to say that she's peaking, but this means one of two things. One, she was completely prepared for the role and had the chops, or two, she sucked and they wanted her anyway. Either way, Disney's walking into this arrangement knowing what they're getting into. One way or another, they were poised to get her whatever musical training she needed. And this is where it really starts to suck, because when you look at what Bill Condon, the director, said about the audition process,
Emma Watson was our first and really our only choice for Belle, for a lot of reasons. Her talent, her beauty, her intelligence.
So it looks like the powers that be looked at Watson and were like, hey, we noticed that you got a degree in book reading, and Belle really likes books and stuff. This would work really well. Oh, you also have a decade's worth of experience pretending to be in an enchanted castle. This is perfect. But the trouble with all of this is how all that reflects onto the music, which I could only explain with Bill Murray's performance as Baloo in the 2016 remake of The Jungle Book. This isn't a joke. This is going to make sense. I promise. Just listen.
I mean the bare necessities, oh Mother Nature's recipe.
All right. Let's be real here. Venkman's vocal performance isn't like Josh Groban after a bottle of wine or anything. It's honestly kind of rough around the edges. You might even go so far as to say that he might not even be trying. You kind of get a similar vibe from Christopher Walken's King Louie. This was a weird movie.
Oh, what we do? I want to be like you.
Okay, so it's one thing to ask an actor to sing well, but it's another thing entirely to ask them to sing well in character. For as rough as Murray's performance is here, you really get the vibe that Baloo is a lazy, carefree, going with the flow kind of character, all delivered in Bill Murray's singing. The way he attacks and shapes his notes, where he chooses to ornament what passages, and just his vocal inflection in general. This isn't necessarily a good vocal performance in an abstract, on-stage concert kind of sense, but this is a fantastic performance of what Baloo sounds like when he's singing to himself while floating down a river.
Take a glass of them fancy ants and then maybe try a few.
Murray is very clearly having fun with the performance.
It's a man cub.
You have never been a more endangered species than you are at this moment.
And with that, let's go to Paige O'Hara's performance. I know it's unfair to compare the two, but this is just such a great example. Right here, you can hear O'Hara smile in the studio. Really think about that. You can hear her smile.
That it's him till chapter 3.
If you pitch corrected either Murray or Paige O'Hara, you would strip away a lot of what they were giving their characters in their performance. And that's exactly what happened here with Emma Watson. Either they didn't like her singing and they Frankensteined all of her takes together, or they did like her singing and they sucked all the life out of her performance anyway. It just doesn't make any sense. Even if they specifically got Emma Watson because they wanted this Belle to have that book-reading feminist energy, they ended up digitally removing any vocal nuance that she gave the character. Like, no matter how you look at it, you're kind of left scratching your head like, what was Disney thinking when it came to this? Trying to blame Emma Watson for her singing in Beauty and the Beast is like trying to blame Henry Cavill for the mustache thing. And then, just to draw extra attention to this vocal nightmare, they have the nerve to hire Josh Gad and Luke Evans to be the supporting cast. Josh Gad, who has experience on Broadway as Elder Cunningham, and as most of the kids will know him, Olaf, is totally left alone to just mess with his interpretation of LeFou as much as he wants. And he's great!
That I'm illiterate and I've never actually had to spell it out loud before.
And Luke Evans, who has a decade of experience on London's West End, absolutely brings the heat with Gaston.
Size of a ball.
Even Dan Stevens, who plays the Beast, is married to a professional jazz singer and vocal coach. At every twist and turn, you're just left trying to figure out why they sucked the life out of one of Disney's most beloved characters. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But this isn't the only time in these films Disney walks all over one of their stars. Part 2. Aladdin. Okay, so history time. Longtime viewers of the channel will already know this, but let's review anyway. So back in the 70s and 80s, right after Walt Disney's death, the Disney company was actually in really serious trouble. Believe it or not, their animation department was basically almost bankrupt and about to get cut from the program altogether. That was until like 1988-ish when playwright and lyricist Howard Ashman and his composing partner Alan Menken swooped in like superheroes and saved everything. Together, they wrote something called The Little Mermaid, which completely changed the course of history and started something called the Disney Renaissance, which were all those animated musicals in the 90s that everyone knows and loves. But here's the the deal. As great as the music was that Menken composed, it was Ashman, at least from what I've been able to piece together, that was kind of the secret weapon that made The Little Mermaid work so well. See, they signed him up as producer, but in reality, he worked with Menken to have the musical numbers function within the context of the story. He wrote the lyrics and basically maintained the overall structure of the story for the film. And it was these two working together that made the masterpiece that was The Little Mermaid. Now, shortly after The Little Mermaid, Ashman talked to the higher-ups and was like, hey, I have this idea for this film called Aladdin. And the Disney execs, being the Disney execs, were like, haha, no. Instead, they immediately brought Ashman and Menken onto another title they'd been trying to get off the ground called Beauty and the Beast. Trouble was that at that point, Ashman was dying due to complications from AIDS, because the world is not a fair place. Disney, knowing how valuable Ashman was, decided to move the entire pre-production of Beauty and the Beast from London to New York so they can consult with Ashman at his New York home. Ashman died 6 months before Beauty and the Beast was finished, and the film is dedicated to him. But before he passed away, he had already done a whole bunch of work with Menken on an idea for Aladdin. But after Ashman's passing, the Katzenbutt here took the idea for Aladdin, basically tossed out like 99% of what Ashman was doing, and was like, cool, here's our new movie. So like originally, Aladdin was gonna be this like Michael J. Fox kind of character, but Katzenberg said, and this is true, that he wanted him to be more like Tom Cruise. These are facts, look them up. In the process of removing all the story elements and characters that Ashman put together, they ended up taking a lot of inspiration from The Thief of Baghdad, like having a sidekick monkey and a love interest and a villain named Jafar. Even Iago was rewritten after the filmmakers saw Gilbert Gottfried in Beverly Hills Cop 2. But most importantly, they removed all of Ashman's musical numbers aside from 3. Arabian Nights, Friend Like Me, and Prince Ali. You'll notice that those are the 3 songs that the genie sings. But Friend Like Me in the animated film does not appear how it was originally intended. Initially, it was going to be a big band Cab Calloway kind of number, and you can still hear those influences when you hear Robin Williams scat. I actually think that someone at Disney might have known that this was supposed to be a Cab Calloway style number and specifically put in this Nicholas Brothers reference right here. I don't know. But after casting Robin Williams, they reworked the song to fit in with Williams' comedic style. That is to say, how he'd fill his performances with impressions and voices and pop culture references. Suffice it to say, I wouldn't be surprised if Prince Ali went through a similar process considering how many characters Williams throws out there during the tune. And if there's one thing that is very, very clear to anyone watching the live action version of Aladdin, it's that Robin Williams' genie is completely different to Will Smith's genie. Now, I'm not saying I didn't like Will Smith. He was absolutely my favorite part of the film, and I'd love to see more of his genie.
Delicious, exotic jams.
Move away from the jams.
But comparing these two is absolutely apples and oranges. Will Smith is not an impressions guy. He's funny, I love the stuff he does, but these are just two different performers. And pushing Will Smith into that Robin Williams role really comes off as forced. Like, you can hear him trying to pull off similar voices and characters throughout the number.
I'm in the mood to help you, dude.
Like, there's just weird little things here and there. Like, in the opening, there's this line referencing Scheherazade, the storyteller for the 1001 Nights. And in Williams' performance, he adds this extra flair when saying her name.
I had them 40 thieves, Scheherazade had 1,000 tales.
But when Will Smith does it, it almost sounds like he's calling Scheherazade a man.
Had them 40 thieves, Scheherazade had 1,000 tales.
That might just be a little thing that just bothers me, but it's all really weird that they would force Will Smith to try and pull off the same numbers when Will Smith's genie is just so different than the Robin Williams genie. If they had already rewritten a substantial portion of the genie's numbers to fit in with Williams' comedic style, it would only make sense for them to do the exact same thing for Will Smith and his performance. This is the genie's introduction. This is where we get to meet him. And the genie we see during this song is not the genie we get to see throughout the rest of the film. And the most infuriating part about all this is that everyone seems to constantly forget that Will Smith's career began with music. Like, he got started doing like family-friendly clean rap. He was already the most Disney-fied rapper out there. I don't know how anyone could screw this up so badly. Why would you have Will Smith not being Will Smith? Why would you have the Fresh Prince trying to pull off Nanu Nanu? I just don't get it. And when you hear him pulling the same voices, it just reminds you of Robin Williams, and it makes you sad. And all that only gets worse when you get to the credits of this film and you realize that they actually did make a different version of Friend Like Me, and it's Will Smith in his element, and it actually sounds amazing.
Mister, tell me whatever you need.
There was no reason not to put that in the film. Why, Disney? Why? Why are you holding your performers back? Why spend all this time and money getting someone like Will Smith only to have him sing his best Robin Williams impression instead of just letting him be himself? It's just unfair. Not only that, but like before Friend Like Me actually starts, they have this little sort of joke opening. It's like a cold opening, but trying to be funny about it.
Well, Alibaba, he had them 40 thieves. Shahrazad, he had 1,000 tales.
It almost feels like it's trying to soften the blow, like they're looking out into the audience and saying, hey, we knew that you were worried about how this is going to turn out, but at least it's not this, right? Which that alone is just a huge problem because it directly violates something that Ashman specifically tried to do with his films. Something Ashman aimed for was being able to smoothly transition from speaking to singing to dancing. And that's an old adage in musical theater. When the situation becomes too emotional to speak, you start singing. And when the emotions grow too much for singing, then you start dancing. Again, I've already covered all this, so if you're lost, I have a primer for you to go and check out. So you can see this done really well in the original Aladdin with how One Jump starts.
Come on, let's get out of here. Gotta keep one jump.
The singing, and by extension the song, organically grows from the dialogue.
We had dialogue in the script. I was like, no. We will back that vamp up under the earlier dialogue, so he will be speaking over that musical vamp. So you make the transitions between the sung stuff and the dialogue stuff as seamless as possible.
But here, the intro to the song isn't just foreshadowed, it's like a direct fourth wall break. You almost expect to see the text, "Put on your 3D glasses now," show up on the screen like you're in some theme park ride. But what's more bothersome is that partway through the show, they just have this big dance number for absolutely no reason. And I mean absolutely no reason. It's like an action scene for the sake of an action scene. We aren't getting anything out of it, it's just there. And that doesn't even begin to address the new song for Jasmine, which I guess might also be a good time to bring up the other new songs in Beauty and the Beast, like the one for Beast and All the Servants in the Castle. Which really brings us to something that is, for me, probably the biggest issue with these live-action Disney remakes. Part 3, The Lion King. So let's play a trivia game. Play along at home, see how well you do. What is the longest running musical theater production? That would be the Majestic Theater's run of The Phantom of the Opera, which has been going strong since January of 1988. Great, wonderful. Which musical currently has the record for winning the most Tonys? That's the 2001 production of The Producers with a staggering 12 wins at the Tonys. Fantastic. But what is the highest grossing Broadway show of all time? That would be The Lion King, with 6 Tonys and a whole bunch of other honors and awards from all over the planet, as well as being the 3rd longest running show ever. As of September 2017, The Lion King musical has grossed over $8.1 billion, yes, that's billion with a B, dollars. And it blows me away how many people don't know that. I've seen it twice on stage, and watching Pumbaa catch that fish in his mouth is impressive every time. Now, if you watch the stage musical or hear the official recording, then you'll know that they made some pretty substantial changes to the music. And it's all fantastic. I love every second of it. And if money's any indication, so does everyone else. It looks like everyone likes it, or at the very least, we all $8.1 billion like it. So, here's the thing. If you have a new set of tunes that have already seen the most intense focus testing of all time, and you own all the rights to it, then why, oh why, would you not only not include anything from the stage adaptation, but actually cut one of the most iconic songs from The Lion King? Why? Why would you cut Be Prepared? What is this?
The need for a different dream.
It's like a slam poetry version of a good song. It's like watching an emo middle schooler try to work out the lyrics to his favorite MCR song after his mom said he couldn't go to the concert. There's just no reason to cut this number, like, at all. Auto-tune him if you have to. Is this where we draw the line? Really? Be Prepared is where I figure, and just let him talk it. It's not like we haven't heard Chiwetel Ejiofor sing before. And yet, somehow, some way, this still isn't the worst part of this film. What is this? What? And like I said, it's not just this number. As I mentioned before, Kid Simba has some really weird auto-tune happening. They just leave Seth Rogen out to dry right here.
Ain't no passing craze.
Like, really? We're not going to get another take of that? Okay. But then that brings us to my big problem with this film. Beyonce's spirit. So we might as well cover all of these new songs that they're adding to these new films. So let's go back to Ashman and Menken. So when they worked out these songs, each song had to have a specific purpose. It had to tie into the work as a whole for a very specific reason. These musical numbers were concentrated emotional representations of characters' deep motivations and feelings, what they wanted, why they wanted it, and what was going to happen. The key story beats and moments all happened during these songs. Having said that, the powers that be decided to make these films like an extra half an hour longer than the originals for basically no reason.
It's cold and it's dark in that lamp, but I prefer it to this.
Which, can we just stop right here and acknowledge that if George Lucas had decided to add an extra half an hour to the original Star Wars instead of just changing who shot first, we'd still be listening to other neckbeards lose their minds on YouTube. But when you look at Disney's first tries at these live-action remakes, like Dumbo and The Jungle Book, they ended up cutting out almost all of the music. In The Jungle Book, they cut out everything except for Trust in Me, The Bare Necessities, and I Want to Be Like You. And they cut everything out of Dumbo except for a weird version of Baby Mine, but don't you worry, we're gonna get to that. And honestly, you kind of understand why they cut out the other numbers. Gonna throw out a yikes for that. But when you watch those films, the singing kind of stands out because they don't really come off as musicals given how little screen time is spent on singing. Like, even though Danny Elfman referenced the numbers in the score,
Casey Jr. comes down the track,
the only one they really kept in earnest was this mutant form of Baby Mine. But when it comes to these three films, you can see how they'd want to add an extra number or two just in order to maintain that musical momentum. Having said that, as soon as you start adding musical numbers, you're throwing off the delicate balance of what characters get to sing about what and when. So whether you really like the songs or feel like they're really necessary in the story or not, they're there. But I honestly just can't figure out why they'd go through the trouble of writing brand new songs instead of just relying on the music that had already been proven to be successful on the big stage. Each of these films have successful stage adaptations. I don't know why they go through all the trouble of reinventing the wheel. One of my patrons, QPlayer, actually had a suggestion that was really interesting, in that they were asking about how often a studio will artificially add a song to a musical just so they can chase the Academy Award for Best Original Song. Which, if that was the case for these films, then that would be really sad because not a single one has been nominated for Best Original Song. And Menken has been nominated for over a dozen Best Original Songs and has won 4 of them, which include the original Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. Even Elton John won Best Original Song for Can You Feel the Love Tonight, which really just drives more nails into the coffin. But yet again, Disney kind of threw their talent under the bus here. Listen to Beyonce's performance. Do you hear what's wrong with it? Me neither. It's great. I like it. The problem is, who's singing it? We don't ever see Nala, the character, singing. It's Beyonce singing over a montage of Simba returning back to the Pride Lands, which is such a slap in the face for Beyonce. Like, look at it by the numbers. Disney's been adding songs for their romantic interests. See, originally, each of these films have an I Want song for their main character. The opening, titled Belle, for Belle, One Jump Ahead for Aladdin, and I Just Can't Wait to Be King for Simba. Then, in the originals, we have a duet with the love interest, something there that wasn't there before for Belle and Beast, A Whole New World for Aladdin and Jasmine, and Can You Feel the Love Tonight for Simba and Nala. And that's where it stopped. In the originals, the love interests never had their own musical number. They never had a Megara moment where they got to sit down and express themselves, and these live-action remakes try to address that. Beast gets Evermore, Jasmine gets Speechless, and Nala gets nothing. You got Beyonce to voice Nala, and you didn't give her a solo number for no reason whatsoever. I know that a lot of people are going to say that Nala's song is this spirit song, but the truth is, it's Beyonce singing, not Nala. And that doesn't even begin to address how much of a diegesis problem this is. In my Tarzan video, I basically complained for 20 minutes straight about having music sung to the audience is not the same as having the characters sing a song. Having Beyonce sing over a montage does nothing to tell us anything new about Nala. We're just being narrated information. It's just like this bizarre new Baby Mine scene in the new Dumbo. It's not Dumbo's mother singing to her child, it's some carny in the background singing to, like, herself. It honestly gives this whole scene a super dark tone. But I cited the original Baby Mine as a great example of what they should have done in Tarzan, and I guess now this. And to top it all off, the cherry on this nightmare cake, Ashman explicitly talked about how and why animation was such a good move for musicals.
There's a big, big problem with music and film. In live action, music and live action film. The only truth I know about it is it usually doesn't work. Music may have more license in the animated film in the same way that it does in the theater. simply because the level of reality is different. There's no game being played by a theater audience. We know that's happening right in front of us, and it's painted scenery and it's not real. When we go to the movies, it's a real street, or it looks a lot more like a real street, and we pretend it maybe really happened.
The abstract representation of a cartoon makes it easier to suspend your disbelief. You can believe a crab is singing because crabs don't even talk. But if you're going to go for as lifelike as possible and then you have them sing, it works in the absolute opposite direction. It makes it even harder to suspend your disbelief and get into the emotional message of the story and the songs. But the thing is that for all the complaining that I do, for all the complaining anyone does, these films are making record-setting amounts of money. Just ludicrous amounts of money. What makes these films work? Pout Cat Mulan. At the time of making this video, the live-action Mulan has not been released, not even the soundtrack. I haven't heard it, which makes you wonder, how could I talk about the movie and the music if I haven't seen or heard it? Well, honestly, in the time and place where I am right now, I feel like I'm actually perfectly poised to kind of highlight why I think these films are doing so well. Now, when the trailer for this film first dropped, it caused a commotion. There were two camps. One group said that they were upset that there wasn't going to be any singing and that there wasn't going to be any Mushu and that overall the film seemed to be much more serious. On the other hand, there were a massive number of people commending Disney for finally making a film with accurate and healthy Asian representation. They were happy that there weren't any show tunes, and they were happy that there wasn't going to be a cartoon Eddie Murphy dragon. Now, here's the thing. I can't tell people what is and is not good representation. That's not my place. But in all the discourse that I hunted through, in all the hashtags and all the Twitter arguments that I went through, not once did I hear or see a single person talk about the music in the trailer. Listen, here's the first trailer that they released.
Yes, I will bring honor to us all.
That's reflection! Now listen to the second trailer they released. That's also reflection. For everyone talking about how great the representation was and how great it would be to have a traditional Chinese folktale come to life with no show tunes, no one even tried to address the fact that they were still using the tunes from the '98 animated film to sell this new one. Show tunes that I might add that were written by two white guys. For everyone talking about how great it was that there was all this representation, nobody seemed to be aware of the fact that the guy composing the score for this new film looks like this. And I'm gonna be really honest here. I absolutely love Harry Gregson Williams, and I'm not just saying that to soften the blow or act like a fence sitter. I genuinely love what he did with Shrek so much that I made a video about it. This guy genuinely does some amazing work. And I'm kind of happy that I'm making this video when I am, because in the off chance that people make it to this point in the video without getting bored and clicking away, I wouldn't want everyone going after him and costing him his job. I really am sincerely interested in what he's going to do. Kind of in the same way you might get interested in watching a video of a kitten cross a highway, because this dude has one tough job ahead of him. But now that we're a month out of the film being released, I gotta ask, why aren't we talking about the music? Because here's the thing, no matter where you're coming from, the fact of the matter is this. Howard Ashman and Alan Menken started the Disney Renaissance by making animated musicals. That's just how it goes. The music isn't a component of the success for these films. It's what made these films successful. It's what brought the Walt Disney Company back from the grave. And the first film that came out after the Renaissance ended was The Emperor's New Groove, which opened with a quasi-musical number followed by an hour of no singing. The music is what made these films so great. The music is why people like Disney movies. And when it comes to the remakes, it doesn't really matter what they do so long as they make sure to include something that resembles the songs that you know and love. They know they're never going to be able to compete with, let alone beat the songs from your childhood. They kept Robin Williams' version of Friend Like Me, even though they didn't have Robin Williams, and that film grossed $1 billion, which is exactly how much the Lion King stage musical had made in its first 20 years. When I asked my Twitter why these films were doing so well, they all said the same two things: nostalgia and families. Parents who grew up with these films are now taking their kids to see it. But the kids being exposed to these films are watching a cruel charade. Half the time, the only way to get the joke is by having already seen the animated version.
Every time that I farted, are you gonna stop me?
No, I'm not. You disgust me.
And really, think about it. When I ask you about your favorite part of The Lion King, do you think of this or this? When I ask you about the magic carpet ride, what's the first image that comes to your head? When you hum Be Our Guest, are you thinking of this? Or are you singing along with Obi-Wan Kenobi pulling a French accent, which, strangely enough, he didn't do in Moulin Rouge? In the music alone, it just constantly feels like we're hearing an imitation instead of an innovation, a reference to something we all know and love. The painful truth is that people will spend their money and enjoy these films because they remind them of something good. Thanks for watching, and I'd like to thank my patrons for making these videos possible, with an extra special thank you to Alec Kulikowski, Alex Klinkert, Clara Tan, Hayden Elza, Jacob Salas, Jordan Adams, Kate J, Myron John Tatarin, Noah Gray, Praylock, Rafael Martinez Salas, and Who Am I? I also like to thank QPlayer for their great observation. If you like what you saw here, be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos. Follow me on Twitter and Twitch to have your musical questions answered live, and if you really like what I'm doing, then consider supporting the channel on Patreon. But that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching. Ow, my ears! Pal de. I can't do this. This is the dumbest joke I've ever made.